Hello boys and girls, welcome to BenchART. I'm for Classic, and my objective today is to show you how Mass Effect Legendary Edition performs on a GT 940 MX or an MX 130 with 2GB GDDR5. Alright, so this is my recommended settings. It is 720p and I've gone all out with everything enabled or maxed out, except obviously VSync. So I even have enabled stuff that usually people don't enjoy, like motion blur and film grain. Right? But this is the results that I got. So at 720p using the maximum settings, my average of frame rate was 55 and the minimums were 35. So it was an experience above 30 with good averages close to 60. The lowest settings provides a much better average and the game's performance pretty much was above 60 frames per second. But for 900p, the lowest settings provides us also a good frame rate, very close to what we had with 720p maximum, but 900p maximum kind of goes under 30 frames per second in some areas. 1080p, the lowest settings, there was some areas already where the game was going under 30 frames per second, so I thought it wouldn't make too much sense to try out maximum settings with 1080p. So wrapping all these results together, 720p, it is my graphic settings of choice, so with average of 55 and the minimums of 35. But you can also go with 900p lowest if you want. So these are the requirements. These guys require a GTX 760 and 8GB of RAM. So I do agree with these requirements. Despite the GTX 760, it is a more powerful GPU than what we have in here. The thing is, we are able to play it anyway. So what I'm showing in here, it is the first area. So you could call it like a small open world area. It is the Citadel. This is way more demanding than for example, the first mission, which is in Eden Prime, where you are kind of shooting and killing Gap. That moment, it isn't as much demanding as the Citadel, and thank God for that, because the Eden Prime, it is where you are kind of shooting and throwing grenades and you have all the action. Citadel, it is a place where you just traverse from point to point, but still I think it is important to be above 30 frames per second, and 720p with maximum settings does that. So it offers a performance above 30, it can range to 40 or 50 frames per second. So I think it's really acceptable performance-wise. But let me just go to the bridge and I will change up to Eden Prime for you to have an idea how it performs outside from the areas and in scenarios that resembles much more of a mission area. So here we go, Eden Prime. Eden Prime runs much better, as you can see. So now that I've talked everything about the performance, let's talk a little bit about these remasters. It is worth it? You might question. Well, it depends. So starting with the things that I consider this remaster to be kind of bad and not in the point where it should be, it is really the character faces. So some of the faces in the first mission, we are currently in Eden Prime, but before going to the Eden Prime, we are on the Normandy ship. And the captain face, which I don't remember his name, which is dressed in blue, his character is completely wrong. I mean, his eyes, movement, and everything, it looks like he's holding kind of a fart or something, or he's taking a shit in a bathroom or something. It just looks entirely wrong. I'm not really sure how the hell they let that thing escape, but it feels wrong. Some of the faces, they are just not there. And despite the original, the faces are not good. At least they don't look weird, like they are taking a dump or something. So that's my opinion regarding some of the faces in this remaster. Now, the second thing that I feel that it is wrong in this game, it depends, alright? But it is the lighting. For me, the new lighting system, it is awesome, because I felt that the original didn't add almost any lighting going on, but some of the scenarios were more dark and colors were more cold, so that was the original atmosphere and the original aesthetic, and it was fine in my opinion. But in this remaster, they kind of changed it to kind of more warm colors, and some of the darkened areas they now have much more light into it. And for me, I think it's fine, because I don't really play Mass Effect 1 for kind of a decade ago. And I think for the most people, especially newcomers, they won't be even noticing these differences. Although for purists and people that kind of plays Mass Effect 1 like multiple times and did finish the game multiple times, it might be shocking to see some of the lighting differences because it completely changes the way some of the areas look. And for some purists and hardcore fans, this will be wrong and will be certainly kind of a critic to the remaster. It is really the changes in the lighting and the aesthetic of some of the places because it really makes a huge difference in the way that some places look. For me, like I said, since I don't play this game for like 1 decade ago, for me it is absolutely fine and it makes the game to look much more recent and something much more newer, despite it still looks a lot like an old game like for 10 years ago. But at least the lighting looks much better in that regard. But the aesthetic, unfortunately, it did change a lot for some of the areas, and not all the people it is really satisfied with that. All right, so that's the two key points that I feel. I mean, the faces and the lighting that are the bad things. Now let's go to the good things. Now the good things that I consider to be in this remaster, it is really the textures and some of the revamps that they made. They are really huge. I mean, especially in environmental detail, the textures are so much better. There are so much grass now, much more grass. I mean, there are much more rocks. So level of detail wise, I think the game really improved a lot. It might not look so when looking to this video, but if you are putting this same scene of the original side by side with this remaster, there is really tons of changes in graphics between the original and this remaster. So I think in that regard, that is good because it kind of it makes the game much better, you know. But it still looks old, though. But I mean, the improvements are really good in that regard. I really enjoy what they did improve, despite it doesn't look like that at first. But when you put it side by side, there is really tons of differences in the environmental detail, the rocks on the floor, the textures of the rocks, much more grass, much more level of detail going on. I think that's really great in my opinion. The second thing is that they kind of fixed it a little bit, the driving of the Mako. The Mako, it is a vehicle that you kind of drive in this first game. There was some critics about the drivings of the Mako on the first game, so they kind of made the driving better. But for some reason, if you don't enjoy the new driving, you can go to the options menu and revert to the classic driver. So I think that's awesome because not all the people are kind of forced to enjoy the new changes, so you can revert some of the stuff, and one of the stuff it is really the Mako. Now, the other thing that they have done right, it is really the HUD. The HUD it is now more close to the Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3, so I think it is fine. And to end this, the price. The price, it is really not great. It is between 50 to 60 depending where you are going to buy the game, but includes all the Mass Effects. The Mass Effect 1, the Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3 fully revamped. All the free games received revamped and quality of life improvements. Well, most of the love it was to the first game though, but even Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3 was improved nonetheless. So it might sound expensive because you are buying such old games that you can buy the originals much more cheaper in any store. In my opinion, I think 50 to 60 bucks might sound expensive, and it is a full price game, but I mean, Mass Effect by itself, 1, 2, and 3, each of these games are very big, so you will be spending 50 to 60 bucks in old games, but old games that really brings tons of hours of gameplay, and in my opinion, these Mass Effects were the best Mass Effects. Mass Effect and Andromeda have nothing against these games. All right, I think if you never played Mass Effect before, I mean the classics, this worth the money. Although if you played the classics like a long time ago, and you want to revisit these classics, all the three, well, in that case, I'm not really sure if it is worth the money. If you are a newcomer and you never played Mass Effect before, I think it worth the money. It worth for you to spend the 50 to 60 bucks in this remaster, because if you pick up now the original Mass Effect 1, you will think that the graphics looks really bad. All right, so it is worth by that. But if you completed these games before, well, I think that it doesn't really worth the money. All right, I think you should save your money. because nostalgia, it is a hell of a thing. Like I told you, there is tons of improvements in this remaster that I didn't notice that they were there until I compared side by side with the original. Because nostalgia, it is so powerful that I really thought that this remastered version, it was exactly equal to the original. And when I put it side by side, it wasn't really the case. All right, so if you played the other titles already, I don't think that this remaster, it is worth it. But if you never played this trilogy of Mass Effects, or if you were like me, that you just played the first one, but you never played the Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3, I think you should consider to buy this remake and enjoy the rest of the game. So guys, I think that's all that I want to talk about Mass Effect Legendary Edition. Hope you keep enjoying the rest of the video, which is just a couple of minutes, and I do hope to see you soon. Goodbye.
Commander, it's Nihilus.
A Turian? You know him?